Hello, welcome back to my channel. This is our Simple Abundance here, and welcome to my kitchen today. We are in the section of the book where we're going through the various rooms as we talk about the delights of each of the rooms. And yesterday it was a lived-in living room, and today I guess it's a lived-in kitchen. I don't know. I don't spend as much time in here, but it's definitely an integral room in the house. Wouldn't you agree? When you think back to the kitchen when you were growing up, for me anyway, and I'm wondering if you share this, do you think that the kitchen was more of a hub of family than even maybe the living room? I feel like for me it was, because we had a kitchen table that was right off of the kitchen counter. And that was really the gathering place for the family. The ages of my siblings were spread out, so I don't know that I have a few memories in the living room of everybody there, probably for, say, Christmas. But it wasn't like we sat down and watched television as a family or anything like that. So the kitchen was really the gathering place, because it had, well, we are going to be talking about dining rooms, but it was in a sense, well, we had a dining room also, but the place that we ate like our regular meals when it wasn't a holiday or something was at the kitchen table. So I also think about it being a place where there were chores. There was also the cat food, so taking care of the cats. And there was, what else? I don't know, like delights like licking the bowl and the spoon and stuff from making brownies. Do you have memories like that? Sarah talks to us today in the entry. It's called, oops, on the wrong day. It's called, wait a minute. Sorry, I didn't open the book to the right page. Kitchen Confidential. That makes it sort of sound like it's a place where secrets are kept. Possibly. Actually, the reason she probably calls it that is because she does tell us a story about how her mom didn't really teach her how to cook, but she did have a recipe book of her mom's special recipes. And apparently when her mom passed on, it was really difficult, and Sarah shares that she struggled for a really long time to actually get those recipes out and make them. Because we've talked about the senses now already, and I do think the kitchen, when I think of the kitchen, I think of smells mostly, but obviously tastes, that's what you're doing here in the kitchen, right? You're making tastes. So for her, those family recipes, like she mentioned some biscuits and things like that that her mom was really famous for, those were an emotional thing that she wasn't ready to really do. You guys have any family recipes that have been passed down? Or maybe they are things that you just know how to make without even having a written recipe. Just like a little pinch of that and a pinch of that. I can't say that there's anything special, any sort of recipe. Well, now that I'm saying that, although it's probably something that my sister makes out of a box, but we did always for holidays have the cookies that are that have the chocolate chip on the top of them. Snickerdoodle, is that what that is? So she does make some of those things that are family traditions. We'll talk later in the summer about food and more about how it brings up memories and traditions and things like that. But Sarah also talks about her collection of cookbooks. And I'm wondering if you guys have a collection of cookbooks. I have a couple. I wish I were a better cook. I didn't really get a huge foundation from my mother either. She did pass away when I was so little, so really we only had gotten to the point of knowing what the various spoon sizes were and cups and things like that. But we didn't get into anything super tricky. I was more of an assistant, but I hadn't really learned. So for a long time I didn't cook at all. But I will say over the last 10 years especially, I've done a bit more cooking. But when I talk about cooking, it's like sauteing things on the stove. Before it was all microwave years ago. I just didn't have any interest at all in cooking. Oh, can you see? I have a pressure cooker and a rice cooker, and it's like an 8-function thing. I love that. That's a lot of fun. And it's really replaced my crock pot because you can make things in it in about half the time and they still taste like the crock pot. But before that, I had a crock pot. And it took me a long time to become a crock pot converter to be converted to the crock pot. My sister was always trying to get me to do it and telling me how great it was, and I had such an aversion. Just thought like cooking is not going to be something that I'm ever good at. So I do feel like I wish I were better at it, because when I look at recipes, and I do have recipe books, but sometimes I look at them and I feel like it's an algebraic equation that I'm trying to figure out. And I've never really been good at following directions either. So I tend to like cookbooks that have pictures so that I can see what it's supposed to look like at the end. That helps me. So I bet some of you out there love to cook and that you have a stash of cookbooks. I have a friend whose husband said that all she does is buy these cookbooks and they just sit in the kitchen because it's just, she's aspiring to do all this cooking, but she doesn't really ever do it. I just have a couple, and the ones that I have are very specific to say, like one of them is a slow cooker one, another one is ways that you can make things that are healthy, like something that you really like. I don't eat meat really, but say you wanted to make a burger, but you wanted to have it be on the healthier side, or make it out of beans or something like that. So I have a few of those. I also was gifted a healthy dessert recipe book. And I think I have another one that I'm forgetting. So I just have a couple. But I love that movie, and I've mentioned it before, that Julie and Julia movie about Julia Child and the woman that decides that she's going to cook all the way through the cookbook. I think that's a great idea, and especially if you have a cookbook from a family member, that would be kind of neat if you could set a goal of maybe doing once a week or something, a special family recipe to take you back. So there isn't really much of a tour today. You can see the kitchen in the background. I think if I took you on a tour, it would take 5 seconds. And I wish I could open up the cabinets and say how organized they are. I did do a bit of organizing in my silverware and utensil drawers. I just got like the dollar store little fabric boxes and did that. And I have other drawers that have, usually I get like the divider things. Oh, you can maybe see that. But I'm not gonna, my kitchen's not ready for an organizational tour. But it's better, and actually you can see that I really hardly have anything on my countertops, and that was because I was inspired by the feng shui talk that we had, and I have really noticed a difference now that I got rid of the clutter. It just feels great. And actually, you see Cookie Monster back there. That is something that's sort of a family heirloom. It was in my grandmother's kitchen for a long time, and then I sort of inherited it, I guess. Tomorrow's entry is a good tie-in for today, so I'm just going to mention it. It's called the Fancy Pantry. Secret Passions, the Fancy Pantry. I don't have a pantry in this house. We had a pantry growing up, though. Did you guys have a pantry? Or do you have a pantry now? So Sarah talks to us about how you can make your pantry fancy. That's a tongue twister. So she even mentions a book. It was written back in the 80s, which she said is not on not in print anymore, but apparently you can find some of these tips online. It's called The Fancy Pantry, written in 1986 by Helen Whitty. And Sarah, let me just read what she says. Well, if you're not somebody that cans things and buys things like that, then she suggests that maybe you get some of those things at the farmer's market. But she says, if you want to go one step further, you can get pretty small pattern fabric already cut into circles to fit on the top of your jams, jellies, and chutney, tying a ribbon, raffia, or twine. Pretty labels are available online. And she says, I also like to pick up preserves from other parts of the country when we go away on vacation. She says, perusing that book, Fancy Pantry, might be enough to convince you to try your hand at your own put-ups. Helen Whitty believes that all, quote, souls should have a pantry, however modest. And Sarah says, I wholeheartedly agree. I never really thought about decorating my things in my, well, I don't have a pantry, but like in my cabinet where I have my food. I hadn't really thought about decorating them. What do you guys think about that? It's kind of like when we talked about getting the spice cabinet organized, how we talked about how some people like to have them in all the same size jars with labels and things, and alphabetized maybe, if you want to go that far. I don't know. I like the idea, but I don't know that it's practical in my life. We talked about when things are not necessarily practical, but there's a nice idea. That would be one of the things that I would say about that. Let me see if there's anything about the kitchen that I want to say that I should have said before I went on to the next one, but this is what she says at the end of the kitchen entry. The kitchen is about the recreation of childhood the way you wanted it to be. Keeping all that was wonderful in your own early years while weeding out those things that caused pain. We remember the hubbub of women, the warm sweets and hovering smells, the I don't know that word, something of food and love. I don't know what that word is. It's split in half and it's just not making sense to me. The wrapping hug of the waste coating of counters and ovens around the walls, the inkling that might be always that Mother Nature would have, totally stumbling over this. I need new glasses, I'm telling you. We remember, no, I'm not going to do that same sentence again because it has that word in it that I can't read. All right. You get the gist of it. The end of it is that that is the room that we might have always found Mother in. The kitchen slips noiselessly into the dreams of our children before they are conscious of it, before they have children of their own and wake up. Mothers and daughters share the kitchen with a common knowledge of women passing their lives there at the sink, the stove, scanning the shelves of the pantry. This is some words from Nora Seton, who also says, it's very important that we don't confuse kitchens with food. And I couldn't agree more, Sarah says. Kitchens are about process, about the making of the meal. Those hours, a quiet retreat, or a din of beloved voices. It says din, not den. She's really challenging me with new words right now. My brain is not working today. It's really hot here. And I like to not have the air conditioning on if I can, because I'm okay being hot, but my brain's not obviously functioning. Okay. So, I don't know if I agree with that about the kitchen not being about food. I guess I see what she's saying because the kitchen is about making the food. I still think it's about the food. But I get what she's saying. It's sort of the gathering place, and not to be sexist, but it is. I mean, the women usually probably are more in the kitchen, even nowadays. But I've shared with you guys, I'm not a mother, and even in my married life, I didn't feel like I spent hours and hours in the kitchen. So I don't have that sort of female domestic story that she's giving a footprint to here, but I do enjoy my kitchen, and you guys saw it from my living room. It's sort of like a part of my living space, and I can watch television if I want when I'm doing dishes or getting dinner ready, and then I just eat right here at the counter too. So that's my setup right now. So I like my kitchen. It has a lot of cabinets. I don't feel like I'm at a lack for space. I have a spot for everything right now. There have been other places I've lived that I haven't, but I could do with a bit more order, and I've seen videos on YouTube about adding lazy Susans and more layers to cabinets where maybe you only have a certain number of shelves in them. So I might do that. I don't feel super motivated because there's nothing really in the kitchen that's bugging me right now. What do you guys think? You like your kitchens? I think it can be a room that could sometimes be a room that you are wanting to make improvements on, especially if you have an old house and you wish you had nicer cabinets or newer things. Like I like my stainless steel stuff that I have here. Oh, and look, you can see something right here that's very me too as well. Those are salt and pepper shakers, Mickey and Minnie. So even in my kitchen, I try to have little personal touches, like we have Cookie Monster, and so it's still, just like the rest of my house, still very Carolyn-ish. Let me know how you are doing and how your thoughts are forming around the kitchen and any of the other rooms that I've gone into so far. We still have a couple more to talk about, so I will be back. And don't forget, the Fairy Tea Party is coming up less than a week now. It's on Tuesday next week, June 23rd, 2020. It'll be at 7 p.m. Eastern Time here live on my channel. Thanks for being here, and I will see you on the next video.